Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Just want to say thank you everyone for attending. We're joined by AVIDXCHANge, who will be leading this webinar for us today. We're to start with AP automation, invoices, and payments. And then I wanted to do just a little bit of housekeeping prior to starting. So if you want to get any additional information afterwards, I know Angela Harris will be reaching out to all the attendees and sending out the recording. But if you would all want us to get in contact with her immediately after, here is her contact information, as well as a link that has our future webinars and events that we'll be going to. So feel free to check that out on any upcoming events and webinars that we have. And then lastly, we just wanted to say that this isn't the exact screenshot, but if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to put them into the Q&A chat window, and we can get to those towards the end when John's a little bit finished. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to John Parisi from AVIDXCHANge, and he can take it from here. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Whitney. Thank you, everyone, for taking some time out of your day today and joining us for a webinar. Just a real quick background on myself. That's a picture of me, so I won't keep it on the screen too long for everyone. I'm with AVIDXCHANge. I'm an alliance manager, so what that means is I work with partners such as E2B Technologies to help them facilitate and work with them and their clients around AP automation and payments. So with that said, background, I've been in the accounting spheres for probably close to 12 to 15 years. Did a stint at Sage for about 6 or 7 years. Then right before AVIDXCHANge, I was with Concur. So all that time working with CPAs, accountants, and the EPR channel. So with that said, let's get started. So real quick, as far as what our agenda, what we're going to look to hopefully cover in the next 35 to 40 minutes today is real quick. We're going to look at the time and cost associated with a manual AP process. Then we're going to look into what does an AP automation mean for you and your company. Then we're going to look at the benefits of bundling invoice and pay automation together. And then finally, we're going to take a look inside of AVIDXCHANge and how we address AP process and how we look at this marketplace. So with that said, let's jump right into it. So let's talk about what our current process are today in a manual state. So typically your manual, you're receiving invoices primarily through the mail. Again, someone has to open that mail, then obviously capture the data. So they are probably coding it, handwriting it on an envelope, possibly entering it as well. We all know that these things can definitely set us up for errors because, you know, as humans, as more we touch something, more likely we're going to break it. Then we may or we may not be matching the purchase orders, depending on if our company uses purchase orders or if they don't. So what it looks like as far as approvals go, I remember back in the day where I worked at a previous company, our AP team having to send out multiple emails. So they were sending out hundreds of emails a day asking for approvals on these invoices. We had people that were walking them down the hall aisles for someone to approve a particular invoice. You know, obviously that's not very efficient. Then when you talk about reporting, you know, if we're not getting invoices entered into the system in a timely manner, you know, are we actually reporting on our liabilities, what they truly are? You know, are we actually stating that correctly? You know, then of course, you know, the whole manual data entry, there's all those issues around that. You know, it increases the likelihood of errors with a manual system compared to an automated system. You know, a GL account could have been entered in wrong. So there's various things that can go wrong in a manual process. Also, I don't know if you knew this, but according to our partners, you know, a non-exclusive cost to process a single invoice is right a little under $12. You know, if you think about all the costs associated with that is associated with processing an AP invoice, let's take a look at what some of those costs actually are. So if you look at how much time is spent on opening and routing the mail, possibly making copies of those invoices, actually entering them into the system. Then, as I spoke about earlier, the manual routing of the approval process. Then, of course, the storage cost of having either offsite storage or a number of file cabinets in your location, making sure that they are filed correctly. There's all of that labor cost associated with that as well. And then you talk about answering inquiries on missing invoices, duplicate payments, which are always a possibility. And then let's talk about the costs associated with ultimately missing discounts. These are all steps that can be add up and really increase your total cost to process an invoice inside your organization. This is what it looks like in all-inclusive cost to process a single payment. It's a little under $8. You may look at this and think, $8 is not that much, but how could it be $8 when I process an ACH check or I'm sending a paper check and the postage is, currently only 55 cents. But if you think about all the labor involved, it really does start to add up. So here's why payment process is one of the first places that you should really look at when you're deciding to automate. You're probably got multiple payment types, so you're probably cutting checks and sending ACHs, possibly wire transfers. You may also have a P card. Again, we talked about that approval process, the reconciliation process, the bank rec process, which checks when checks are cleared, and then the follow-up, of course, is doing the reporting. You'll have multiple payment types. Even though checks are still the most frequent way most companies are making at least some of their payments electronically by ACH, credit card, or wire transfers, that means managing multiple payment types. The AP team has to stay on top of how to pay each vendor. They have to manage the banking information. They have to flag the payment types in the vendor master file of your accounting system. Then each payment has its own workflow. Maybe Friday is a check run day, and the team spends the day printing checks, stuffing and stamping the envelopes. Tuesdays and Thursdays could be, the ACH or the credit card batches to the bank, and the remittance advice to the vendors. Then there's probably a wire day they may do, and where someone is in the bank portal filling out the forms for every wire that they want to send. Typically, this could take 5 or 10 minutes for each of these activities, but I've heard it taken as long as an hour to send a single wire transfer. So if you got 15 or 20 of them to do throughout the day, that's a couple of hours that someone is taking out of their day doing these manual tasks. If you look at approvals, a lot of businesses require 2 signatures per check because that's the way they've always done it. Well, that takes up a lot of time. In most companies, you're still talking about the time employees are burning, shoe leather, walking down the aisles, tracking down managers or employees or even executives to collect signatures. Meanwhile, paper checks are still not as secure as electronic payments. Paper checks are by far the #1 cause of fraud inside of small and medium-sized organizations, just because you got check stocks laying around and it's so easy for those to be stolen. Why inquire manual signatures when you could just click on a button and get it done, have it done automatically for you. You could be looking at reconciliation. There's a lot of consolidation of information for a proper reconciliation, and the information is all over the place. It's not in real time. You have to log into a bunch of different systems and wait for the information to come to you. When you're using checks to pay, you got to wait for them to clear. If you got outstanding checks at month end, you got to account for that as well. You got to do the accruals for that. Then you're looking at the follow-up. Somebody pays something by credit card, and then the invoice comes in, so you pay it again via check. So you get duplicate of payments, or a vendor changes their bank account number and their ACH payment doesn't go through. They move, they change locations and their check gets returned to you. There are 101 type of scenarios, things that can go wrong with invoice payments. And then you look at reporting and audits. in a paper environment, when you're done issuing checks, you print out a copy of the check stub and staple it to the invoice. Then those stacks of invoices go into a room somewhere. So someone will ask, or when someone asks for a report or an auditor comes in and they want to go through it, it can take a long time to find that particular check or invoice. A manual process has all these inherent flaws built into it compared to when you automate this system with a solution such as AvidXChange. You know, this is very surprising to a lot of people when we show this particular stat. The average time to process a invoice from receipt of that invoice to approval is right around 23 days. So if you think about that, you know, most invoices are due in 30 days. So if you think if we're paying in 23 days and you only have 30 days for the terms, are you really allowing yourself enough time to get those net 30-day invoices paid in a timely manner? So that's a really eye-opener for a lot of our customers when they do look into how much time it does take to process an invoice by the time it comes in-house until they actually make payment. It's a little over 3 weeks. You know, there's a way of thinking about the entire AP workflow. First, there's the physical paper invoices, how it gets into the system today, to creating a digital record with all that information will be captured and scanned. And it would be in an automated workflow for you as well. So you won't have to worry about all that manual data entry and errors that can be associated with that. Invoices and POs can be matched in the system. The automated workflow really speeds up the approval process, and you don't have to worry about missing invoices moving forward. Reporting, again, will be in real time because these invoices are getting to your system quicker. Your reporting is going to be much more current in real time as well. Also on the payment side, obviously the current payment process, especially relating to manual checks, is very costly, as we showed earlier, and very labor intensive. So moving to an automated payment process really saves you not only time, but also on your labor costs. So what does AP automation mean for you? So let's take a look. This is what life would look like for automation after you implement a automated system such as AvidXChange. So everywhere where you see an AvidXChange logo, this is where software or one of our services can step in to automate that manual task. Where you don't see an AvidXChange logo, those blue circles, the 3 of them that are remaining on the screen there, these are the steps that are unique or critical to your business, where you will still maintain 100% control. This doesn't mean we don't have tools to help you automate these tasks, such as smart coding. However, you will still have 100% control over things such as which GL coding you would like to apply an invoice to. You know, a couple of things I would like to know: we do have some of these tools. AvidXChange is a SaaS-based solution, so as long as you can access the internet, you can access AvidXChange no matter where you're at, no matter at what time. You can be on any type of device. The system will recognize if you're on an iPhone or on your phone and format the screen for that particular format as well. So if you look at as far as some of the pain points, as far as the different steps throughout the AP process, the first 4 or 5, these are all manual process as far as to handle an invoice, from an invoice coming into your organization to opening the mail to routing that invoice throughout your organization. Those are all manual processes. The next 2 steps are, again, steps that you will keep complete control on. The coding and the approval process will help you with the approval workflow. Then the next 2 are all around the accounting system integration, with around the budgeting and the accounting system integration into your accounting ERP solution. And then the next step would be posting to the GL account. And then the other manual task is going to be, maintaining your supplier information inside your accounting system or cutting the checks. Again, that's going to be a service we will be able to help automate. And then on the back end, how you have to handle any type of disputes, audits, or late payments, all the research, all of that could help facilitate and make it quicker for you with an automated system compared to a manual system. So what does the automation mean? So if we look at the automation solution Snapshot, a unified solution for a modern finance department will encompass all of these areas. So from requisitions, creating those that are ultimately the purchase orders, matching the POs and the invoices, getting your invoices in, getting them along the way through the approval process, ultimately getting them paid and ready for reporting. Now, currently the AvidPay network has over 470,000 suppliers in the network. So you know that when you come on board with Avid, we will already know how your vendors would like to be paid. Do they want to be paid by a paper check, which we're happy to facilitate? Do they want to be paid by an ACH, or do they want to be paid by a credit card? We offer multiple payment options. We have dedicated vendor services team that really makes the difference with enrolling vendors into this network. That's why we have over 470,000 of vendors in the network already. Also, the potential for cashback is available for you as well if we make payment on your behalf to your vendors via one of the electronic forms of payment, either being a credit card. I won't say credit card more, it's a electronic one-time use card, or by an ACH. We offer over 140 different type of integrations into different type of accounting systems, including Sage and Sage Intacct. Our systems are extremely secure, very reliable. We complement that with most things, and it truly is amazing. I'd like to talk about on the Avid Bill side. Our Avid Bill allows suppliers to submit their invoices in a variety of convenient ways, including email, including fax, including the U.S. mail. All that information that is on an invoice, that's going to be extracted from the invoice and available for approval within the Avid Invoice application. Our Avid network, it's really comprised of two teams. It offers support around the payment, the whole entire payment experience. We have a supplier enablement team and a payment service team. So we have a supplier enablement team. They will actually be reaching out to your vendors with your approval, obviously, that we are ready to enroll them into this network. And we will educate the vendors and the suppliers on the payment options that they have available to them. We'll actually be giving the vendors more options than they currently have, other than just the traditional paper check that they may be receiving. That's real important for suppliers these days, for them to have multiple ways to receive payment. They may want to receive payment earlier, where if their only option was check, that wasn't available to them. They may want to have those other electronic payments presented to them so they could choose how they would like to be paid. They may have needs that, they may want their money as soon as possible so they can make their payroll or make an additional growth plan for their business. To have that dedicated team really drives the adoption. It's a huge differentiator for AVIDXCHANGE that we have this dedicated supplier enablement team that is bringing your suppliers on board along with our payment services team. Once payment has been sent out to the suppliers, AVIDXCHANGE keeps working on your behalf to deploy the payments through our AvidPay network. So we also have, on the second leg of our team, is we have a payment services team. And that's the team that actually facilitates the payment on behalf of your clients, on behalf of yourself. We're sending out those payments in multiple different ways, but also making sure that those payments are clear so they know how to make those payments for you. Today, in normal outstanding checks follow-up, someone on your team has to try to find, those vendors if they received the check, or if they haven't received it, do we have to reissue them a new check? You have to do all that due diligence for your auditing purposes. So just imagine not having to do that. We will actually do all of that for you. It's the supplier enablement team that's going to identify suppliers' preferred payment method and maintain the supplier payment data on your behalf. So you won't be required to store all that sensitive information any longer. Again, our payments can be received in 3 different formats. They could be either the ACH, a one-time virtual credit card, or by paper check. Again, they all will be in a secured environment. So real quick, just like to talk about, a lot of people do question and have questions and concerns around the type of security that AvidXChange does have. Just know we adhere to the very most stringent security standards that are set out there in the marketplace. This is one reason why we have why MasterCard has partnered with AVIDXCHANge and made a substantial investment in us as a company as well. So you can see by some of these logos on the screen that we do take security inside of our company very, very seriously. So after your payment is deployed, back to the payment services team, they will follow up on all the outstanding payments and will work with you and your suppliers to determine the next steps needed for any of the outstanding payments. Again, we have the supplier enablement team that is always working with your vendors during their onboarding to educate them. Again, we're making sure the payments are received and applied correctly. Then ultimately, all that payment information that you need, it will be at your fingertips to report on. So you're always going to be able to see your payments and all your payment information. You're going to be able to see how your vendors elected to receive payment and when that payment actually cleared, to make that reconciliation for you on the back end a lot easier. And because all that information you need, reconciliation is going to be at your fingertips. So let's talk about some of the benefits of bundling invoice and a payment automated system together. So how does automation help modernize an AP automation for a company when they move from a manual system to a automated system? There's a lot of challenges that have an impact when you do roll out a new system. The first one is around the whole requisition purchasing orders. You have, people that are just, we call them maverick spenders. They're just going out and spending the dollars from the company without going through a formal process. Then there's the issues around matching POs and not having those match back to the original purchase order. Second one is around processing and the approval of invoices. There's always lost invoices that you have to deal with, and that impacts as far as if there's a lost invoice, there's always the issue of having duplicates. Like I said before, fraud and duplicate invoices, like I stated just earlier, that's always a concern with a manual process compared to a automated system, especially around if you're issuing paper checks with majority of how invoices are still paid. I believe the last stat I saw was about 60 to 65% of all payments are still made by paper checks. So just imagine how fraudulent that could be, or how you are set up for the potential for fraud to occur in your business because of the availability of those paper checks laying around inside your company. Then there's all the costs associated around paper and having to deal with that. Your staff wasting time coding, all that information manually working to follow up with your suppliers, phone calls, and then just on the back end on reconciling. And just all the time it takes, just the manual process of all that paper coming through your organization from the time it comes in through the front door until it actually gets processed, approved, and at the tail end when you actually make that payment. And then there's that high opportunity cost when invoices are late and you're not able to make, you're not hitting that 30 days so you could reap the discounts. And then the whole complex workflows. With a paper system, if someone is out on vacation, that invoice turns out to be sitting on their desk. No one is chasing it down. There's no one there to approve it. With a automated system such as AVIDXCHANge, you could add ad hoc users into the workflow. So if someone is out of the office, they could delegate someone else for that workflow. So it won't be dependent on one individual for that invoice to flow smoothly through the system. So it won't no longer take that 2 to 3 weeks. You could cut it down to almost by 2/3. Last numbers I saw is the average workflow approval. By the time it comes in until the final approval, instead of it being about 3 weeks, you get down to about 3 to 4 days with an automated system. And then it just limits growth as well as far as a manual system as well. With manual invoices, you're not being able to scale the way you may like to be because your cash flow, you're not seeing what your cash flow truly is because you may have outstanding checks out there that have yet to be cleared. And the last side is on paying suppliers and some of the challenge. It's just a processing cost, like we showed earlier. The cost associated with just printing checks. You got the printing costs, your check stocks, your stamps. If you just factor in just the hard cost of the stamp, the envelope, to process that within inside of an automated system, it could be as low as 70 cents. So compared in that entire payment process, doing that, having that being done electronically for you for 70 cents, compared to having to do it manually, whereas the stamp alone these days is 55 cents. You have poor visibility with a manual system. You really don't know as far as how your vendors, how your suppliers may want to be paid. You're always continuously have to update your master vendor file, your supplier file with that information. If they move, you have to be on top of that because you'll end up getting those checks returned back to you. So you have very poor visibility with that pertinent information. There's that manual and slow process, things getting lost just in the whole shuffle as well. And then the whole audit and compliance, it makes it so much easier. If you end up getting audited, you could give access to the auditor to AvidXChange, and everything will be at their fingertips. All that imagery of that invoice will follow that invoice completely through the workflow, and the auditor will be able to see exactly who touched that invoice at what particular time, and any questions they may have will be within inside the system because it does keep a log for you as well. And then all the follow-up, AvidXChange will do that on your behalf as well. And then, like I was saying earlier, it just cuts back on the potential for fraud compared to a manual system. So let's take a real quick into AvidXChange and how we address the payment process. So before I jump into the product itself, some of you may not be aware who AvidXChange is. We've been around for a little over 18 years now. AvidXChange focus on taking the time and pain out of a manual AP process to help organizations more efficiently manage and streamline that process. We are a cloud-based solution. So again, users could access invoices for approval or review from anywhere at any time. And unique permissions and restrictions can be assigned to all users. And we've created integrations with over 140 different accounting systems. Partners, we work with partners such as E2B technologies to enhance the functionality that they already provide to you and to take that manual data entry out of the equation. Recent strategic partnerships, like I said earlier, was with MasterCard. We are working with KeyBank and many others, large institution banks as well, along with over a $500 million investment by MasterCard and by these key investors inside of our organization. That's helping us propel our future growth and continue to lead in this industry with our innovative solutions and our infrastructure to support, our expanding customer base of over 5,500 companies that are currently using AvidXChange inside their companies. These partnerships are really exciting for us, especially in the banking channel. And the banking channel is really taking notice of the groundbreaking solutions that we are bringing to the marketplace. Just simply put, we removed the whole manual work associated with managing paper from receipt of invoice, routing invoices for approval, data entry to your accounting system, processing payments, and fielding vendor calls. We can deliver a fully automated solution within about 35 to 45 days. So you could start recognizing these benefits as quickly as possible. We'll actually offer a guarantee where if you could be up and running within 30 days, we'll give you a discount on your service because we want to get you up and running as quickly as possible. We're going to put the resources behind your implementation. If you're willing to put the resources on the front end, we're going to put a team on the back end, and we're going to work as quickly as you would like us to get you up and running. Just some real quick stats before we jump in this product. AvidXChange, again, like I said earlier, currently, I think we're at about 1,200 employees, 5,500 companies. We're currently about 470 suppliers in the network. I think the really interesting stat is the volume of invoices that we manage in a day. If you think about it, on this call, we're going to be on this call for maybe an hour. Last year, we processed over 13 million invoices last year. That translates to about one invoice every 2.5 seconds. That's every hour of every day throughout the entire year. So we're going to be here on this call for about the next hour. So in this next hour, we'll probably process close to 1,400 invoices from the time we started this call till by the time we end. So we have that scalability. So as you grow as a company, just know you won't have to move off of a solution such as AvidXchange because we've already scaled to the point where we're going to be able to anticipate your growth, and we've already scaled to the point where we'll be able to handle your anticipated volume moving forward. So let's take a look into the actual tool itself. So after you log in, everyone on your team will have access to AvidXchange, everybody say on your AP side or whoever you would like to have access to the tool. Again, the tool is, we don't price it at a per user, it's all transaction based. So we'll give whoever you would like in your organization have access to this tool. You can have grant them access. So when they log into AvidXchange, the first thing they're going to see is this dashboard. This is going to show them all the pending invoices that need approval. So they could easily go in here and just click on which of these invoices they would like to take action on. There's also a separate screen for any invoices that there may be a dispute on. So you may want to address those first thing in the morning. And these could be disputes based on a wrong dollar amount, wrong price for a particular line item. So you could address those earlier instead of having to dig into a particular invoice to see that someone has not approved that invoice when it was going through the approval process. So along with the ability to sort and organize, you could also query the information however you would like. You could query the information by, the invoice number or by supplier. You could do it by, the total dollar amount. So there's a number of different ways. Again, all these fields are going to be customizable by you. You'll do that during our implementation stage. So it's going to be very easy for you as a user to see the invoices and how you would like to work with them throughout the day. So the workflow and the approval process is going to be very simple as far as how those invoices come into the system. So when an invoice comes into AvidXchange, the very first thing we're going to do is scan that invoice into our system. We're going to digitize and pull off all that header information and bring it to the forefront into a digital format for you. The image of that invoice is going to live within inside the system, and whenever you like to review it, it'll be available for you as well. The default GL, when you receive an invoice from a specific supplier, can be set. You can set it so it always defaults to a particular supplier for a particular invoice. You could also set it by a specific account code as well. As far as you could also add as far as comments on a invoice. So if you had any details with a invoice, you could add those into a invoice and that'll follow it through the system. You could add attachments to an invoice. So if you had a contract or some type of an agreement, you could attach it to an invoice and that attachment will follow it through the approval process and live with the invoice inside the system. And then the workflow itself. So let's talk about the workflow and how that is set up. We're going to mimic the workflow that you currently have inside your organization. We understand that invoices should follow the workflow that you currently have set up in your system. The AvidXchange workflow engine helps keep invoices moving through the approval process automatically. By setting up timers at each step of the workflow, you can provide users an allocated number of days to complete a particular step. If that step isn't completed after that allocated time period, that invoice will begin to show up on an escalation report, which can be sent to specific people inside your company. Conditional steps can allow you to insert a step in the workflow when an invoice, say, meets a certain criteria like a specific dollar amount or a particular vendor. If a dollar amount is over, say, $5,000, it may need to get a VP approval. Or if it's only $5,000 and below, you could bypass that step. So you could set up the workflow to be single layer or multi-layer, and it's as complex as you currently have it inside your organization. You know, in this instance, step 3 of this workflow will only occur if the workflow is equal or greater to the $5,000. You know, and we also, inside the tool, there's also a history tab. So any of the activities that have taken place inside of this invoice will be kept track of for audit purposes, and it's a perfect place for an audit trail. So any changes that have taken place on this invoice will keep track of. Who has approved it? Has there been any changes to this? All of the information will be kept live inside of AvidXchange. So if you ever need that information, see who hasn't made the approval, who made a rejection for, who made a change to it. Again, it's a way to help prevent any type of fraud or to discover any type of fraud that may occur. So that's a real quick snapshot as far as how you may want to approach automating the whole AP process inside your organization and the process of paying your suppliers. So hopefully I gave you just a high-level overview as far as just the industry in general, some of the things you should consider when you're looking at automating your systems on your side of the house, and how we here at AvidXchange addresses some of those needs. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Whitney and see if we have any questions right away. And Whitney, I think you're going to kick off a poll question. So real quick, the poll question is, what's the next steps? Would you like to schedule a demo to take a look at AvidXChange? What we'll end up doing is have a call with you up front. We'd just like to understand a little bit better your particular pain points, what you're trying to solve for, so we could customize the demo specifically for you. So if you want to schedule a demo, just click on that very first button there. If you'd like to have a little bit more information, click the second one, or you really here just to learn. So click one of those three. It'll just give us a indicator as far as what level we should do as far as the follow-up after our call today. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them into the chat window. We'll take questions right after the poll closes in about a minute.
Okay, thanks, John. Sorry, I was muted, but.
Oh, no problem.
I did go ahead and launch the poll, and then we did have one question come in.
Sure.
Can we send a file of inventory receipts that would automatically allow processing of an invoice for payment, or is it dependent upon a user approval?
No, it could be, you could set it up as a user. So it could come in, an invoice comes in by a particular user, we could do it that way. Or if an invoice comes in from a particular vendor, that could be routed to a particular individual as well. So hopefully that answered that question. So there's a number of different ways that an invoice can be routed through the system, and the system has some smart tools. So it will see if it's by a particular vendor, that vendor will be routed, or that invoice from that vendor will be routed to a particular individual for approval.
Great. And then here's another one. What happens if we have a new vendor?
If you want to add a new vendor, you always want to add it to your accounting system, because that's always will be and will always remain the system record, and then add them to Avid, either manually or via async. It all depends on your accounting system you're using. With Sage Intacct, we have a bi-directional, so if you upload it in, say, Intacct into that master record, that's going to flow back into AVIDXCHANge, so you don't have to manually type it in. But if you do want to add a vendor, always add it into the accounting system, because that will always be your master system of record, should I say.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. And then one final one. Do you code the invoices for us?
Oh, do we code the invoices for you?
Yeah.
We don't. We don't code them for you. You know, since that process is going to be very specific and unique to that business, you know, so we leave that step in the 100% of that will be in control of that customer. But we do have some smart coding features that can help with the coding. Again, if we see an invoice that comes in from a particular vendor and it always goes to a specific GL account, it will remember that, and the very next time that invoice comes in from that vendor, we will code it to that GL account, but always know you could always change it after the fact. But no, we always leave that particular step in the process in the hands of the customer. So they'll always maintain 100% control.
Okay, great. All right, well, I think that's all the questions we have for now. I'll give everybody a little bit more time of their day back, and I appreciate all the help and you taking the time to do this for us, John.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for attending today and sharing some time with us.
All right, have a great day, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.